Years ago, we had a tremendous tolerance for pain. 5,000 years ago, we just wanted the sun to rise, right? Today, everybody in this room has massive expectations. We want the Wi-Fi to work at 30,000 feet on an airplane, and we have a very low tolerance for pain.
Welcome to a special edition episode of the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. As we count down the days to the 2025 CRISP Game Changer Summit, we're looking back at the 2023 Game Changer Summit with our keynote speaker, Joe De Sena.
You'd be a better person, our families would be better if we had a high tolerance for pain and low expectations.
I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of CRISP, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. CRISP started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. Every year, the most committed law firm owners in America convene at the CRISP Game Changer Summit in Atlanta, Georgia for 2 full days of world-class speakers, transformational law firm growth strategies, unparalleled networking, and unforgettable experiences. The road to the summit starts here. From now until the 2025 Game Changer Summit taking place this November, join us as we relive and revisit some of our favorite moments from past summits. Today, we're looking back to the 2023 CRISP Game Changer Summit where the founder of Spartan, Joe De Sena, took the stage to discuss why delaying gratification is key to achieving bigger goals, how to use your true north as fuel even when you want to quit, and how overcoming challenges can rewire your brain for future success.
We're all gonna face a tough moment like I'm describing here, and if you don't practice adversity, you're not gonna be able to get through it. You're gonna quit.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free.
What's up, guys? How we doing? Should we do some burpees? Nobody wants to do burpees. I'm gonna give you a little background on myself. I'm gonna go back to the 1970s. The goal here is to turn everybody into a Spartan. Actually, we are all Spartans, right? We're all pretty resilient creatures. We've survived on this planet for a really long time. We can get through the impossible, but there's a lot of layers that are on top of that gritty, inner core because we live soft lives. We didn't live soft lives 5,000 years ago, but today it's pretty damn soft. Climate controlled, warm, showers. My kids somehow have DoorDash showing up, little minions, deliver food every day, right? We don't have to do the work we used to do. I grew up in Queens, New York. How many people saw the movie Goodfellas? Goodfellas, yes? Ground zero for Goodfellas. I grew up in Howard Beach, Queens, right across from the Varios that are depicted in that movie. Everybody in this little neighborhood was either doing bad things or they owned their own business. They were hustlers. They were getting after it. If you didn't hustle, if you didn't do the hard work, you got left behind. Anyway, I grew up in this neighborhood. It was pretty unhealthy. My mom's mom, my grandmother, gets cancer in like 1973. Turns out there was a huge incidence of cancer around that area. For all the lawyers in the room, you could probably generate some class action lawsuit or something. But there was a dump, a garbage dump, and about 15-mile radius, huge incidence of cancer. Mom's mom gets cancer. My mom wants to find a different way, walks into probably the only health food store on the East Coast at that time. Walks in, meets a yogi who had just landed from JFK Airport from India. And he introduces my mom to a different way. He says, had you considered yoga? Had you considered meditation? What about becoming a vegan? As incense was burning in the background in this health food store. Remember, back then, there was no Lululemon, there was no Whole Foods, this stuff wasn't cool. He convinces her to take on this lifestyle. My parents get divorced, obviously. This is crazy talk for me and my sister, my friends. Everybody thinks she's nuts. They were all joking. Was she feeding you branch sandwiches now? We had people doing chants in robes in the living room. I had pictures of yogis on the wall. I couldn't explain to my friends what this was. I just wanted an eggplant parm hero, get me the hell away from her. But she was right, and she pushed this new lifestyle, and she got healthier, and she got us healthier. She eventually moves my sister and I to Ithaca, New York, because it's a more forgiving place, more open-minded, lots of professors with Cornell University and Ithaca University there. My dad stays behind in Queens. My dad's house is next to the head of the Banana organized crime family. At the time, he's the big boss, big columns in front of his house, lots of fancy cars showing up every day. I wanted to leave Ithaca, get back to the neighborhood. I wanted to make money, be around my friends. I'm graduating high school, and I want to go back to the neighborhood. And my friend says to me in Ithaca, why don't we go to Cornell University? And I said, how the hell would we go to Cornell University? My grades suck. I wasn't planning on going to college. Nobody had guided me. And he says, well, my dad's a professor at Cornell. He'll get us in. That made sense to me. Coming from the neighborhood I came to, he had a guy, right? And the guy was going to get us in. His dad was going to get us in. So at that time, I had already had a little business in Queens. That neighbor, that head of the Banana organized crime family, had set me up. When he saw the split between my mom and dad, saw my family was having trouble, he said, why don't you come over and clean my swimming pool? So I went over there on a Saturday. This was a few years earlier to us graduating high school. And he sat me down and he said, I'm going to teach you 3 things in business. He said, number 1, if you're going to come over here to clean the pool at 8 a.m., show up at 7:45. On time is late. He said, and he was a scary guy. Like, even though I was a young kid, we knew he killed people for a living. So, but it was attractive at the same time, as crazy as that sounds, right? Mobsters are attractive. They had the money, they had the power, they had the influence. He said, number 2, he said, even though I'm paying you to clean the pool, you need to go above and beyond because I'm going to recommend you to a lot of people. He said, you should clean the shed, you should straighten up the lawn furniture, clean the windows. You're not getting paid for that, but you should do that. And then number 3, never ask for money. You'll get paid, if you do a good job, which was counterintuitive, right? I was only doing this for money. So anyway, I employed those tactics throughout high school. The business had grown, and here I was making a decision to potentially go into Cornell because we had a guy. We go on the interview, my friend John and I nailed it. My dad was so proud. His son went on an interview at Cornell University. We didn't do anything yet. We just went on an interview, and it was a big deal. And neither of us got accepted. We weren't smart enough. I didn't have the right SAT scores, but now I was really intrigued. Now I was really interested. Wow, like maybe I want to fight my way in here. So we're about to leave because there was no way in. And my friend John says, my dad said if we take extramural classes, if we're non-matriculated students, we could take up to 3 classes at Cornell. They don't count towards anything. If we prove that we do well, we could reapply and we'll get in. So I thought to myself, okay, this summer I got to go run my pool business. It was becoming a bigger business at the time. I'll go to St. John's University. Maybe I'll take a class or 2. I'll level up, learn how to study. And then when we come back, we'll buckle down and prove ourselves and get in. My friend says to me, screw that. If we're going to get serious in September, I'm going out to Vegas. We're going to party all summer. And then I'll come back and buckle down in September. And that was my first introduction to delayed gratification, right? I was going to do the work. He was going to go party. And that'll come up later in the speech. So I go to St. John's University, I study, he goes out to Vegas, we come back in September, we both work very hard. I get 2 A's and a B, which I might as well have been, working for NASA. That was a big deal for me. We reapply, neither of us get in. They tell us, the head of admissions says, look, you can't come in a back door. But now I was really intrigued. He pivoted, he went to UNLV, he had quit. I came back the next semester, I reapplied, didn't get in. Came back another semester, reapplied, didn't get in. My 4th semester, I started to waver. They started to break me. I thought maybe this isn't for me. My business was getting bigger. I had plenty of bosses and big-time mobsters that were my clients. I felt like the big man on campus back in Queens, and I was gonna pack it in. And my mom, who in my mind had no connections other than with yogis and crunchy people, she said, I want you to go meet this professor, Anita Racine at Cornell. She comes to my yoga classes. Out of respect for my mom, I went, sat with Professor Anita Racine. She sat me down. She looked at my transcripts. She said, I see your grades are pretty good. She said, do you like textiles? And the truth was, I didn't even know what a textile was. She said, because I have 93 women in my department at Cornell, and we want some diversity, we want some men. I said, I love textiles. And so she accepted me into this textile department, human ecology, and I studied clothing. I studied the manufacturing of clothing. I studied the science of creating all kinds of fabrics. I studied women's hemlines. My daughters and I could watch a movie, and I know exactly what era that is taking place in the movie. So there were some tremendous benefits to studying textiles. If I had to do it again, I would definitely do it again. It was actually great. So I got in, I graduated on time, it was amazing. My last semester, I don't know how I did it, I was on Dean's List. Went back to the neighborhood to run my business, but right before I left, I met a guy at Cornell, an Italian guy, who asked me what I was doing when I was leaving in one of my classes. He was a judge in the entrepreneurship program, and I said, well, I'm going back to run my business. He said, you're an idiot. I said, why? He said, because with your work ethic, you're running a business on the side and you're going to school. You just graduated an Ivy League school, you should go to Wall Street. And I had no connection to Wall Street. I assumed after the 1987 crash, there was no money to make there anymore. And I just wasn't interested. My business was doing very well at the time. I wanted to get back to the neighborhood. So I went back. Every month for 4 years, 48 months in a row, this gentleman, this old Italian guy up in Ithaca, would call me and say, hey, have you looked at Wall Street yet? No. Al, thanks for calling me, but I'm doing fine. I'm great. I own backhoes now and bobcats and trucks, and I don't want to go to Wall Street. 48th month, 4 years in, at that point I'm like 24, 25 years old. He called me and said, I want you to buy a stock. He says, this company called Syntex. I've been watching it for years. And he was a money manager. That's what he did for a living. And I thought about it. I'd never bought a stock before. That day, I went to a customer's house who owed me a lot of money. He was a pharmacist. His name was Eli Novick. I said, Eli, I'm here to pick up a check, but I got a question for you. I said, my friend just told me to buy the stock Syntex. You're a pharmacist. What do you think? He said, I can't believe it, Joe. I'm buying some today. And he sat me down, and he called his broker in front of me, and he set up an account for me, and he convinced me to buy $140,000 worth of this stock, 10,000 shares. He said, you're single, you're young, good time to take risk, you're making money, you're not gonna be able to do it when you're married. The next day, the company got taken over. I made $100,000 in one day. I said, I'm going to Wall Street. This pool thing and organized crime thing's for the birds. This is great. So I ended up selling the business to some guys that work for me. I pivoted, found a job on Wall Street, learned the entire business over a couple-year period, helped write the first research report on Yahoo, back then when the internet was first starting, and set up my own shop. Ended up building a nice-sized business, had about 50 traders sitting on a desk. We traded equities and derivatives for all the big banks, Goldman, Merrill Morgan. They were all our clients. And while I was doing that from the mid-90s, I started to feel unhealthy. I started to sit at a desk a lot. I started to make a lot of money, do a lot of dinners, do all the things that business people do. I was on Wall Street. I felt good that I was doing all this, but I didn't feel good inside. And so I started to think about those things my mother was preaching, that healthy lifestyle. And I happened to stumble upon a guy who did adventure racing. Adventure races were kayaks, bikes, runs, really long distances, 300, 400, 500 miles long. And I got sucked into that lifestyle. And the adventure racers took me in because I was writing the checks and paying the bills, right? They lived this way, but they couldn't necessarily fly themselves to Fiji or to Switzerland, wherever it was. So I covered the bills. They taught me the ropes, and I went and did all these races. And when I came back to the trading desk each week, I felt miserable, right? I hated just looking at screens and sitting there and not living. When I was out in the mountains and carrying ropes and pulling canoes and paddling, I felt alive. And I started thinking, gee, I wonder if I could turn this into a business. I wonder if I can get my way out of finance and actually create a business where I get to live this way and I get to change lives. So that was later 90s. In 2001, I started the first iteration of Spartan. And the idea was, we're gonna put on 350-mile long races. The first race was in the British Virgin Islands. It was gonna happen right after September 11th occurred. So it was terrible timing, but obviously I didn't know that was gonna happen. And I set it up down next to Richard Branson's Island, 350 miles long, 100 competitors, had all these sponsors lined up. September 11th happened, and obviously that fell apart. But I held the race anyway because I wasn't gonna let that terrorist act hold us back. Lost a bunch of money, lost a person that was setting up our course, cut their leg. We put that person in a dinghy to go back to Tortola to go get stitches. Unbeknownst to us, the engine didn't start in the dinghy. They drifted away for 8 days. No one noticed because we had this whole race going on. When I found out 8 days later, we got Branson involved. He lent us a helicopter. I got the Coast Guard involved. We found him 150 miles away on a deserted island, Little Tobago. Sports Illustrated wrote a story about it. True survivor. And that should have been the last race I put on, right? I nearly killed a guy. But I'm a glutton for punishment. And I put on a second race and a third race and a fourth race. And I used to have to lie to people to get them to come do these things. Like, oh, we're gonna have a barbecue this weekend. And they would show up and I'd wake them up at 5 in the morning. They said, why are we getting up at 5 in the morning for a barbecue? Well, we have to carry the barbecue up the mountain. And 26 miles later, they did a marathon and they were completely transformed. But I couldn't get it to work commercially, right? I had to lie to people. And 10 people would show up, and 30 people would show up, and 50 people would show up. And for a decade, I did this, and I lost a lot of money. By 2010, I decided I'd give it one last shot, change the name to Spartan, create more of a military set of obstacles, hide gladiators in the woods. While people were running down the trail, they'd get tackled by gladiators. I had all these crazy ideas. The lawyers would hate me for what I came up with, and it worked. 700 people showed up to that first race called Spartan, then 1,000, then 2,000, then a competitor popped up called Tough Mudder, and this thing became an industry. And before you know it, we had millions of people competing each year. By the time 2019 rolled around, we had finally made it. We made a ton of money. We were doing really well. We bought out Tough Mudder. We're on top of the world, and the pandemic hit. And the pandemic was an absolute disaster for us. We lost $50 million that we didn't have. We nearly went bankrupt 5 times. I'm just coming out the other end of it now. The Wall Street Journal did a negative article on us last August. I mean, it was just an absolute nightmare. So sometimes, you do all the work, you get really excited, you're passionate about this thing, and then the wheels fall off and, you did everything right, but we're coming back. So I told you that story for a reason. I've had lots of ups and downs, lots of experience. And in my mind, written books on this, interviewed lots of people, had 10 million people do a race, lots of conversations. In my mind, I've created this journey that I want to share with you that everybody must go on to be successful, whether it's marriage, whether it's being the best employee you can be, whether it's running a business. And if you can imprint what I'm going to show you, this journey, this chart, in your head, you're gonna know where you are when your wheels are falling off, when you're having a tough time. You're gonna understand why you need to do hard things every day, why my mother was right about all this. I thought she was wrong. We all thought she was wrong, right? And so if you could imprint what I'm gonna show you in your head, I promise you, life will become easier. Doesn't mean it won't be hard, but you'll be able to get out the other side. Here's a little video I'm gonna show you. Gus D'Amata, famous boxing coach. You guys will remember him when you see the video. He talks about why it's important to have a plan and do what I'm about to say here.
That's what always tell me, Gus D'Amata, my mentor, he would always tell me, part of being a professional is preparation, that you're prepared for everything. You've seen it already. You've gone through the whole thing in your mind. You've outlined it. You've visualized it.
Yeah.
And so you're prepared for everything. Not just the good, the bad. Every possibility. And the other part of being a professional was that your emotions would never get in the way of your job, no matter what. No matter what. I say it one more time, no matter what.
You ready for the fire? We're firemen. We are firemen! The heat doesn't bother us. We live in the heat. We train in the heat. Yeah, let's go. It tells us that we're ready. We're at home. We're where we're supposed to be. Flames don't intimidate us. What do? We control the flames. We control them. We move the flames where we want to. And then we extinguish them.
Anyway, the point is, you've got to prepare for the worst if you want to be successful. And that's what he's talking about. And that's what I'm going to walk you through here. Look, today's society, grit is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity, right? Like I needed to be gritty to be able to survive what I went through with COVID. We got shut down in 45 countries, right? I had already sold $45 million worth of entries that I could not deliver on. It was only going to last 2 weeks, right? It lasted over 2 years. Absolute disaster for me. If I wasn't gritty, if I didn't live the way I live, if I didn't take the cold showers, do the burpees every morning, have the tough mindset, I would have quit 5 times. Years ago, we had a tremendous tolerance for pain. 5,000 years ago, we just wanted the sun to rise, right? We had very low expectations. Today, everybody in this room has massive expectations. We want the Wi-Fi to work at 30,000 feet on an airplane, and we have a very low tolerance for pain, right? Things don't go well. Maybe your best lawyer leaves you. Whatever it may be, we flip out. The world would be a better place. You'd be a better person. Our families would be better if we had a high tolerance for pain, right, and low expectations. And so that's what I want you to think about. These are the 10 principles. This is the journey. This is the journey that I want you to imprint in your head. Step 1, find your true north. Why are you doing what you do? For me, I was on Wall Street because I wanted to make money. I'm doing this because I want to change lives. Every single day, somebody sends me an email, somebody comes up to me, Joe, I lost 50 pounds. I'm back with my husband, I'm back with my wife, I gave up drugs, I no longer drink. I spent time with my kids, I didn't kill myself. I got veterans telling me they didn't kill themselves because of the races. So my goal is to change 100 million lives. That is my why. That's a powerful why. When the wheels fall off, that why keeps me intact. So figure out your why. How do you figure out your why? What would you do if you had all the money in the world? What would you do if it was your last day on earth? But even more importantly, ask yourself this question: what would you do even if you were failing at it every day? Like if you would do the thing that you're failing at every day, that's probably your why. For me, for 15 years, I lost money at this, but I kept doing it because I loved it. So clearly, that is my why. So nail your why. Next, commit. But I mean commit like a pit bull. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the marathon monks in Japan. Anybody out there? Marathon monks, Mount Hiei, outside of Tokyo, 800 years ago, came over from China, set of Buddhist monks. If we wanted to become monks there, we'd knock on the door, say we want to become monks. They'd say, great, shave your head, put on these wooden sandals, wear this robe, walk the 25-mile course every day for 100 days in a row. We would all do it. We'd get 2,500 miles done. We high-five each other. We're ready. We want to be monks. They say, whoa, not so fast. Take this sword, take this rope. You have 800 more days to go. If you decide to quit, you got to kill yourself out on the course. That's the kind of commitment I'm talking about. Extreme. It's an extreme commitment. But like if you want to build a business, if you want to build a family, if you want to be great at something, it requires that kind of commitment. So you got to commit. Notice, as the days are going by, since we figured out our true north, since we committed, excitement is starting to wane because it's boring when you've got to get that serious. You got to start maximizing time now. Raise your hand if you ever heard, there's a great blog called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? I forget what Olympics it was, early 90s. Australian team, best at 8-man crew. UK team wants to win. There's no way they're going to win. They got 18 months to train. Coach of the UK team says, listen, here's what we're going to do, guys. Every day we're going to ask ourselves, when we have a decision to make, will it make the boat go faster? Guys, we had a great day today. Let's go get some Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Ask ourselves, will it make the boat go faster? It's not going to make the boat go faster. We're not having the ice cream. We had a great week this week training. Let's go hang out with the girls. Will it make the boat go faster? No, it won't make the boat. We're not going to hang out with the girls. For 18 months, they answered every question that way. Sure enough, they went and won gold. But that's not as exciting. That's not as exciting. It's hard to do. But if you want to be successful, that's what it requires. Got to start delaying gratification now, which is a derivative of what I just said, right? So you ever hear of the marshmallow test? 1972, Professor Walter Mischel, Stanford University, takes a bunch of children, puts them in cubicles, offers them a marshmallow. You can eat the marshmallow now. If you wait, I'll come back and give you 2. They study the kids for 30 years. The kids that are able to delay gratification, any human being that's able to delay gratification is more likely to be successful. Better SAT scores they found, better houses, better marriages, better, everything in their life was better. No surprise. When we had our first child, and I learned of the test, I said to my wife, we have to find out what we have. We have to test this boy or return him. And so Jack was 6, and I sat him down and I gave him a scoop of ice cream, and I said, Jack, you could take the scoop now, or if you wait, I'll give you 2. And I set the timer on my phone, and 3.5 minutes in, I kid you not, Jack said, Dad, how long do I have to wait to get 15 scoops? My message to you is we're playing for 15 scoops in life, right? But it's going to require some pain. It's going to require less excitement. When I came in last night at 1 a.m., I was on a late flight. I came into the lobby. There were still people there. They weren't delaying gratification. They were not playing for 15 scoops. Entheos. This is the root word of enthusiasm. You need enthusiasm to get through these tough times that you're going to face, because it's not as exciting on this journey we're on, however, whatever the thing is that we're chasing. And that's when disillusionment starts to sit in. Again, I've had 10 million people do one of our races. I've done an insane amount of events around the world, crazy stuff. The Iditarod, you guys know the Iditarod? Dog sled race across Alaska. I did it by foot in the winter. I broke the trail with teammates for the dogs. 30 below temperature. It was absolutely miserable. I wouldn't even fly over Alaska anymore. I have PTSD from that race. But I've done some crazy things, and I know a little bit about disillusionment setting in. And it happens whenever you're doing something hard. But if you remain enthusiastic, if you fake it and smile through it and talk to yourself and somehow remain positive, you will go a little further. Then what happens? Then the naysayers show up. For me, it was when last August, Wall Street Journal called, bankruptcy section, they're going to do an article on me. That's the worst phone call to get. I'm going to be a cover story on how I'm not paying my bills, how Spartan's not going to make it. That's a death sentence. Nobody's going to sign up for a race if they read that article. And I'm sitting there contemplating quitting, because that's where most people quit. And I remembered my speech. And I was like, I know, this is a naysayer. I know exactly where I am. I just got to make it past this. True story. So I did. I didn't quit. I used this mindset, right? I had really low expectations, and I had a higher tolerance for pain during that phone call. Somebody from Eastern Europe that grows up on the front lines of a war or next to a wall in the 80s, they're not going to quit if the Wall Street Journal calls. They're just thinking, am I getting lunch today? Right? So that's the mindset we have to have if we want to be successful. Now we got to dig our way out. We didn't quit. We got to dig our way out. We're only at mile 50 in a 100-mile run. What you need to make it to mile 60 is you have to have embraced adversity every day. You got to manufacture some adversity in your life every day. I know everybody out there, Again, I've had hundreds of thousands of conversations in my life. I know everybody out there sitting at a table is thinking, this guy's nuts. We don't need to do burpees. We don't need to take cold showers. That's ridiculous. I have a perfectly good working couch at my house. Netflix is great. That's fine, but we're all going to face a tough moment like I'm describing here. And if you don't practice adversity, you're not going to be able to get through it. You're going to quit. So you got to do the hard stuff, the stuff you don't want to do. I was standing out here at 6:45 a.m. this morning. They asked me, do you want to come from behind or from the front? I said, what do you want? They said, well, it's a little more uncomfortable for the speaker to come from over here. I said, well, I'm coming from over here. I don't want to do it. I don't want to take a cold shower. I don't want to do the hard thing. But I learned in my life that by doing the hard thing, that by practicing the hard stuff, it makes me better. It levels me up. By the way, if this was the 1500s, I'd be on this stage telling you guys we need more penicillin, we need more Netflix and more couches, right? Because life was tough back then. But life's not hard anymore. All right, so we embraced adversity. think about that green bubble. That's where we live. Every generation that goes by, that bubble shrinks. And what I'm suggesting is live in the red zone. And the red zone is not even that bad. The red zone back in the 1800s was much more of a stretch than today. You know, the red zone today is, all right, let's cook instead of ordering in. Like, that's extreme, right? Grit. How many people know of Angela Duckworth, University of Pennsylvania? She great woman, friend of mine, right? She defines grit as the ability to keep going, to stay focused, even when you're not seeing success. So you start this new law firm, you start this business, I start my business, I'm trying to get into Cornell, whatever it may be, and you're not seeing any progression. It's not getting any better, but somehow you remain enthusiastic, you stay motivated. In my opinion, grit is really determined by your why, how strong your commitment was. Do you have that sword, that rope, right? Did you delay a bunch of gratification? Because if you didn't show up, at 1 a.m. in the lobby here drinking at the bar, you did the work, you went to bed early, all those things add up in your mind. So when the going gets tough and you're trying to get through that last leg of this journey past the false horizon, in your mind, you're saying, well, shit, I did all this work. I'm going to hang in there. I'm going to get the last 10 miles done. Now, if you do get the last 10 miles done, there's tremendous benefits. Tremendous benefits. I have a podcast. I've interviewed 700 people, neuroscientists, psychologists, Olympians, billionaires, you name it. And I've learned a lot in those interviews. And one of the things I learned was this idea of future memory. The brain, the neuroscientists can see it, the surgeons, when they look at the brain leaves marks, tracks, when we take on hard things and we complete hard things. It leaves gaps in the brain, physical gaps, when we take on hard things and we don't complete them. So people that don't complete hard things are more likely to quit in the future. People that finish hard things are more likely to finish in the future. And it's especially prevalent for young people, young kids. So the more hard things young kids can take on, the more tracks they lay in the brain that the neuroscientists see, the more likely they are to be successful in life. The other thing that the brain does is it gives you a taste of all those wonderful chemicals you get at the finish line. It gives you a taste at the next starting line. So very important that we finish the last 10 miles of this journey. The other thing we get, we build community, right? And we gain integrity. I think about integrity this way. I think about structural integrity of a building. If we were all engineers and we were putting this building, this tower up, we'd have to test all the parts and pieces and make sure, the wind can handle, or the glass could handle the wind, and the steel could handle the load. And there's no way to know what kind of integrity you have, if you don't test yourself. You don't test your parts and pieces. And the only way you don't test yourself on the couch, right? You test yourself when you're doing the hard thing, when you don't want to do that thing, when you got to fight through, when the world is fighting against you and you're pushing through anyway. You gain integrity. The other thing you gain is community. I was giving this speech to Delta Force operators in their secret location, and I only had 9 on this journey map. I only had 9 principles, and they said, Mr. De Sena, we agree with everything. We agree on the journey. We've studied this, but you're missing one. I said, what am I missing? They said, community. Nobody does anything great alone. And I said, it's a great point, right? Along the way, on that journey I just showed you, you're going to pick up friends. You're going to build relationships that are unbreakable. And by the way, I would implore you, you're only here probably to build your business. That's how we built our business on Wall Street. We did the normal dinners, we did the golf, we did all that stuff. As soon as I started doing hard things with clients and potential clients, we 50x'd our business. Because now I have something to talk about every day with those. Oh, how'd you train? How'd you eat? What time did you go to bed? Every day you're talking to those people. You have conversations about things. Nobody needs to talk about the dinner. Everybody does dinner. So anyway, you build community. Those are the 10. Snap a picture of that if you can, because I promise you'll be somewhere on that journey sometime in your life if you're doing something hard. And then we've got, a buddy of mine owns a company called Tavistock. He's worth $6.5 billion. And I was with him recently and I said, what would you say the number one attribute that's required to be successful is? And he said, hands down persistence. And so those 10 that we just went through, right, that is the definition of being persistent, just not quitting, applying to Cornell 4 times in a row and getting rejected and just continue to do, losing money for 15 years in a row with my business, but continuing to do it, getting punched in the face post-pandemic and somehow hanging in there.
I want to give a huge thank you to Joe De Sena for sharing his valuable insights with us at the 2023 Crisp Game Changer Summit. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.